You probably, good morning everybody. It's Thursday, 22nd January 2026, and it's about 6:30. You've probably heard the term identity politics. Now, I don't want to talk about politics because that's a very polarising thing. Lots of people aren't interested in it, and it doesn't have a lot to do with running. But just use that term to grab your attention. Identity politics, those who haven't heard it, means people say your politics is decided by how you identify. For example, whether you identify as male or female or some other, whether you're Generation Z or Baby Boomer generation or some other generation, whether you're a home owner or a renter, and so forth. Now, sometimes I think some of those identifiers, for want of a better word, are used by the political parties and the researchers and so on to narrow down the demographic that they need to appeal to get votes. But leave that aside. Let's just talk about how you might identify for the purposes of this video. And I'm wondering if you identify as a runner. In other words, if people ask you what you do you say, oh, I'm a runner? If you do, are there criteria that you have to meet before you can say that? For example, in order to identify as a runner, or say you're a runner, do you have to run a certain number of times per week? So if you go to parkrun on a Saturday but you don't do any other running, but you run the parkrun and you do it in a respectable 25 minutes or so, can you still claim you're a runner? Some running coaches and people who make video content about running and so on say, well, if you're going to claim to be a runner or to be a runner, you probably should run at least 3 times a week, and on the other days you should do a treadmill session. You go to the gym, strength and conditioning training, maybe do some yoga or Pilates or something else. If you don't do those things, but you run 3 times a week, let's say, are you able to call yourself a runner? If is there a set distance you need to run in order to call yourself a runner? For example, you have to run 15 or 20 kilometres every week before you're allowed to say, I'm a runner. Supposing you run 3 times a week, that includes your park run, by the way, but you run 5Ks each time. And you do that because you say, well, that's a distance I'm comfortable with, and I allow myself about half an hour each time, 3 times a week to do that, because then I've got to get home, shower and get to work and so forth. I used to be a runner. What about if you got your shoes from Kmart Jolly Joggers, as my kids used to call them, when we bought them for when they needed joggers for school. If you bought what you could afford, it was cheap, perhaps. You weren't terribly concerned about brand or any of that other stuff. You just wanted a pair of shoes so you could go running. Or supposing you run in bare feet, or you run in sandals made from recycled tyres. Supposing you got your singlet, top, whatever you call it, and your shorts. Talking about men, of course, but I've seen women wearing those outfits as well. And you got your outfit from Best and Less. Nothing wrong with Best and Less. You didn't go to the sports store and pay for the brand name and the logo. Again, you bought something you could afford that was comfortable and would do the job that you needed it to do, which is be able to be worn while you were running. Are you still a runner if your gear isn't brand name? What about if you don't have a smartwatch or a running app on your phone? You're not on Strava. You don't have the 5K app that Parkrun have just incorporated into their ecosystem, if that's the word. You turn up, let's say, you turn up in your Kmart Jolly Joggers, your Best and Less singlet and shorts, no tech, and you run a few times a week. Are you still a runner? I'm going to answer this question eventually, but I'm going to throw a few more scenarios out first of all for you to think about. Now, supposing you have a bunch of designer clothing and you've got some Adidas or Nike or whichever one brand you prefer, and you've got all that sort of gear, you've got a smartwatch, and you've got the a running app on your phone and so forth. So you've got all the stuff. Let's say you run 3 times a week and you generally run somewhere around 10 or more Ks per session. Morning. And then you also do a park run on a Saturday. So you'd be perhaps up to somewhere around 35 or more Ks per week. Your morning, hey doggy, very aware of the training you do to take notice of your nutrition. You make sure you've had plenty of fluids before you go out, so the day before, and so forth. So you've got all that sort of stuff covered. And one day you decide to sign up for a local, let's say 10k event. You pay the entry fee, you get your bib and the rest of your swag. I think that's the word they use, if there is stuff like that. Maybe even it's a big one, and you can buy some merchandise of your own as well. And you're on the start line and you're all ready to go. The gun is fired, ready, set, go, whatever it is, and you're off and running. Somewhere, let's say around 6k, something happens and you just feel as if, well, I can't keep running. I've got to stop for a while, or I've got to slow down, I've got to walk for a while, or something like that. Are you still a runner if you do that? If you cross the finish line, that you're walking or hobbling, or even worst case scenario, somebody has seen you struggling and stopped and taken your arm and thrown it over their shoulder, and they've run with you through across the finish line. Are you still a runner if that happens? I'm asking this question because asking these questions because there seems to be, in some parts of the running world, a sense of purity that says if you don't do whatever it is the purists say you should do, or should be doing, then you're not a runner. Now clearly if you turn up to Parkrun or the 10k event that you paid your entry fee for and so on, and you walk the whole distance, you probably ought not to use the term runner because you're not running, you're walking. And as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. You can do that. You get from the start line of the event to the finish line of the event. I don't care how you get there, as long as it's within the rules. You didn't stop and get a cab on the way or something, or get one of those electric scooters or something. I don't care. But if you run once a week, for example, hey doggy, as far as I'm concerned, you're entitled to call yourself a runner. If you run 3 times a week, that you run 5k every time for the reasons that I outlined, or for any other reason, you're entitled to call yourself a runner. If you are the guy who regularly pounds out 10 or more k's, but due to the on the day syndrome that I've talked about in other videos, something went wrong that day. You don't know what it was, nobody else knows what it was. It just was one of those things that happened on the day, and you had to walk a bit that day. We had to walk across the finish line. You're still a runner. And I think okay, you're obviously not in the class of the marathoners, you're not in the class of the ultra marathoners, you're not going to be getting a podium finish. But I think one of the things that discourages people from taking up running or having a crack at it is, what will other people think? You know, I've got a bit of belly fat perhaps, got a bit of cellulite or whatever in my thighs. My form is a bit uncoordinated. I land on my heels and I look like I'm eating my dinner with my arms and so on. And I don't want to look stupid. And I don't want other people to be sort of sniggering at me behind my back. So I'd really love to go and give parkrun a crack or whatever, but I don't want to be the object of ridicule or look or feel stupid, so I don't go. So I made a video recently asking some questions like this to do with motorcycling, and I came to the conclusion that the sort of questions I was asking and the sort of things that people seem to think about and perhaps trying to make rules about, they don't really matter. And that's in relation to motorcycling. And I think, given the qualification of, well, if you walked the 5k, you're not a runner, or if you walked, you go out with your walking group every couple of days of the week, then you're not a runner, and you don't claim to be. You say, I belong to a walking group. But with that exclusion covered, if you are running a park run, you're running a couple of times a week, you're running a distance that you feel is comfortable and right for you, and you're giving your heart and lungs, your cardiovascular system and your aerobic system a workout, your muscles a bit of a workout, and you're burning off a bit of that belly fat or cellulite in your thighs or wherever it is, then you're entitled to call yourself a runner. And my advice, for what it's worth, is don't listen to or worry about what other people might think or say. Do what you want, what you feel comfortable with, what you enjoy doing, and be happy with whatever the result or the outcome is. You don't have to compare yourself with anybody else. You just have to try, and you're not always going to succeed at that even. Try and be a little better each day than you were the day before. And if you can't do that even, because maybe you just reach the point where you can't get any better, just try to be consistent and say, well, you know, I consistently run 3 times a week. I consistently run 10Ks, and I consistently run about this time, or whatever it is that you're seeking to achieve. Now, having said, don't worry about it or listen to what anyone else says. Somebody might occasionally say to you something like, you know, if you didn't use your arms like you're eating your dinner, in other words, your hands are not crossing the midline of your body, your running might be a bit better. They're not criticising, they're just making a suggestion to you about how you might improve your form or your technique, which will lead to improved running. But you want to say that about your hands crossing your body is, if your hands are moving, perhaps you can see what I'm doing now with my hands, in line with your body, they're doing the maximum they can to provide you with propulsion. If you're doing what I'm doing now, you can see me crossing the body like I'm using a knife and fork and cutting up my food. There's a lot of wasted energy there. It's not giving you forward propulsion, and it's wasting energy. So that's what I mean about crossing your body. If when you're trying to run up a hill, you lean forward from your hips, and somebody says to you, you know, if you lean from your ankles rather than your hips, your running will be better. They're not criticising, they're offering you a suggestion that helps or might help you to run better. And the reason that makes a difference is if you bend from the waist or your hips, you are compressing your diaphragm in your lungs. Whereas if you lean from your ankles, clearly you're not doing that. Compressing your diaphragm or your lungs means that your breathing's not going to be right. So that's a suggestion, not a criticism. If somebody says to you, you know, when you're running, don't look down at your feet or look down at the path directly in front of you. Get your head up a little bit, get your chin off your chest, put your chin in the direction where you're going, and if possible, focus your eyes on the middle for the long distance. Again, that's not a criticism, it's a suggestion of how to improve your running. And again, that makes a difference because chin tucked down on your chest, eyes down on the road in front of you, looking at your feet. Again, that all goes to close off the airway in your throat. And so it means you're not going to be breathing properly. And because you're not breathing properly, you're not going to be running properly. All right, so are you a runner? Check box. Do you get up and run at least once a week? Yes, you're a runner. That once a week can be you go to park run and do the park run. That makes you a runner. If that matters to you. When I say identify as a runner, I don't mean that to define you and say, well, I'm a runner, that's the only thing I am. You're more than that. You're a whole host of things. And running's just one of the things that you do. But other people don't get to define that for you. All right, well, there are my thoughts about are you a runner, and the question of do certain things in running matter or not. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your run. If next time you're out, good luck with it. And I'll talk to you again when I'm making the next running video, whenever that might be. Have a good day. I'll catch you later.